This meeting is going to be John chapter 20. If you guys want to go ahead and turn there, we're going to start in just a moment. If you have your Bibles like me, I try to keep it super simple. New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, chapter 20. If you have your smartphones, open up, your Bible apps to John chapter 20. We're going to see something very similar this morning. The first service we looked at Mark. And Mark kind of does this thing in the first 8 verses. He takes you to the empty tomb and he leaves you there. And he wants you to wrestle with the empty tomb. He's asking the question, what is the rest of the story for you? John does something that's very, very similar as well. John is going to take everything throughout his entire Gospels, bring it to a point, and bring you before the empty tomb, and he's going to ask you, do you have faith? And honestly, I really believe that's John chapter 20, verses 30 and 31. I really believe that's the end of his Gospel. Now, I know there's chapter 21 still. But what I'm saying, he brings everything to that moment. He brings you before the tomb and he says, here's the deal. Do you have faith? Do you believe? Do you believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God? He wants to know if you have faith and what kind of faith that is. Because listen, not any faith, just any faith, is going to cut it. For example, it's not the kind of faith Jesus is looking for that we find in John chapter 4. This is the nobleman and his son. Remember where he comes to Jesus and says, I really need you to heal my son. And he does. And then the guy just waves bye-bye and disappears. You never see him again. It's not that kind of faith. It's not the kind of faith that we see in John chapter 5. This is where there's a man that comes to Jesus. He heals him. And then that guy turns Jesus into the authorities. Again, it's not this kind of faith that we come to Jesus for something that we want from him. But rather we come to him because of who he is. It's kind of like the faith we find in John chapter 9. Don't turn there, but this is the blind man. And Jesus heals him. And I love this account because then he's brought before the religious leaders of the day, and he says, look, here's the deal. I don't know about your rules, I don't know about your religions, I don't know about any of that jazz. Here's what I know. I was blind, and now I see, period. And that's the kind of faith we need. It's the kind of faith that says, I see a man who turns water into wine. I see a man who walks on water, who can calm the storms. I see a man who feeds nearly 15,000 with a tiny lunch. It's the kind of faith that says, I see a man that can raise the dead. That's the kind of faith Jesus calls us to. And so John brings you this morning to the empty tomb. He parades in front of you 4 different individuals, 4 different kinds of faith, and he says, what kind of faith do you have? And so this morning, guys, I want you to look into the eyes of those 4 individuals because I think you're going to be surprised. You might find yourself in the midst of one of them. And so, guys, I welcome you this morning to the tomb. Let's go ahead and get started. John chapter 20. Let's just start in verse 1. Let's start at the beginning. Early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the entrance. So she came running to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one Jesus loved, and said, they have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we don't know where they have put him. Okay, so you have Mary. She's going to the tomb. She gets there. It's still dark, right? The stone is rolled away. The tomb is empty. She's really not sure what's going on. She takes off. She heads back to the house to go see the disciples. She gets there, she's explaining everything to these guys, all of the emotion, everything that's mixed in there, and there's only 2 disciples, 2 that find it prudent enough that they should go check and see what in the world she's talking about. So Peter and John, and they take off and they just start heading tails into the booking as fast as they can get there, right? They're running. This Peter is probably more of a sprinter and not so much a distance guy because he takes off and he's in the lead. But then after a little bit, John passes him, and he arrives at the tomb first, and I kind of picture it, you know? John gets there, and he stops. He's outside the tomb. He doesn't need to go in. He stops outside the tomb. Peter, a little bit slower, maybe more winded, kind of like me, probably, huffing and puffing, and he comes trucking along, and he passes John, and he goes straight into the tomb. John uses 3 words to describe what takes place here. He says they looked, they saw, they observed. It's not just a casual glance. They really, really studied the situation. For John, he didn't even need to go in. He just stopped and he looked in the, we say it's the empty tomb, right? And we're going to continue, and I'm going to say probably till the day I die, the empty tomb, because we know Christ wasn't there. He's risen. But let's be honest, it wasn't really empty. Jesus' burial cloths were in there. And it only takes a second for John to see those. And when John sees the cloth, right, the veil that covered Jesus' face, it unveils the truth for him immediately. And he immediately goes from chapter 20, boom, back over here to chapter 11. He has this deja vu moment where the other time we talk about burial cloths in the text, in the Gospels, is when they're being removed from Lazarus after Jesus raises him from the dead. And so for John, he just looks and he sees it and he says, yeah! He's alive! He gets it, that's it, period. You don't need to talk to him, you don't need to write it out, draw it, you don't need to explain it. Done deal. John, on the spot, gets it. But Peter, he's kind of in here in the tomb, not so much. He's not so sure. He's kind of looking around and trying to take it all in. I mean, look, put yourself in his sandals for a moment. If Jesus did really come back at that moment to speak with him, what in the world is Peter going to say? I mean, honestly, he just denied Christ 3 times. 3 times before the rooster crowed, he denied him. He looks across the courtyard after that happens. He catches eyes with Jesus. They lock in that moment. He's filled with shame, sadness. He cries. He runs away. What's he going to say? Because guys, oops just isn't going to cut it. And maybe this morning, as you look in the eyes of Peter, maybe you can relate. Maybe you can relate to what he's going through, because in the midst of this celebration, I walk up here and I say, he is risen, and we all get excited. Maybe it's just not all that exciting for you. Maybe you're like Peter, and this day is just kind of another day, and it's just another reminder of the sin and the guilt and the shame and the baggage that you carry. And you hang your head in the midst of a risen Savior in an empty tomb. Maybe you're like Peter. We'll come back to that. Peter and John, they see what they need to see. They take off. They head back to the house. Mary, no doubt, passes them along the way. Mary's coming back to the tomb. She gets there. Now she's all alone. She's the only one there. She's hurting. Her world is just caved in around her. Jesus is gone. This is one of very few men who has received and loved her for who she is on the inside and not just on the outside, not just for anything that she's done or can do, but really truly loves her. And he's gone. He's not there. And she's hurting. And she's crying. And she's all alone at that empty tomb. And this is what the text says. Verse 15. Jesus is there. And he asks her, "Woman, why are you crying? Who is it you're looking for?" Thinking he was the gardener, she said, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have put him, and I will get him." In verse 16, Jesus says, "Mary." She goes running, she gets there, she's alone, she's hurting, she's broken. Her world is just crumbled around her. And she's alone at the empty tomb, and her eyes are filled with tears. You ever cry so much that you can't see in front of you? That's where she was. She was crying so much that Jesus is standing right in front of her, but she couldn't make it out. It was all blurry. He's right there. And she couldn't see him because of the pain that she was experiencing. And maybe that's where you're at. Maybe you can relate. Maybe you're like Mary. And maybe this year hasn't been anything new. It's just been the same old garbage. Maybe it's brought pain and heartache, brokenness, whether it's relationships or health, any way. And you stand there in the midst of a risen Savior. And you want to cry out, "Lord, where are you?" But you just can't see him because of the pain you're experiencing. And if that's the case, then you need to do what Mary did. You need to listen. Because Jesus called her name. And it made all the difference in the world. Because he is alive. Guys, from this moment we go back over here to back to the house again, the upper room. It's verses 19 through 22. And we don't have time to break it all down, so I just want to share what happens. Essentially, all the disciples are gathered together in that upper room. Well, let me rephrase that. They're all there except for Thomas. We don't know where Thomas is. The text doesn't tell us. We have no idea. But all of them are there, but not Thomas. And Jesus shows up. And he appears to the disciples, and he spends some time with them, and he's just there with them. And I imagine he just ministers to them and talks, and he's just real and one-on-one. And then he goes away. And then what do you know? Thomas shows up. Right? All the disciples are like, dude, you missed it. It was epic. Jesus was here. He's alive. For real. It was so awesome. You totally missed it. And he's like, yeah, about that. I don't know. I'll believe it when I see it. Actually, what he says is in verse 25. He says this: unless I see the nail marks in his hands, and put my finger where the nails were, and put my hand into his side, I will not believe. And a week later, he gets that opportunity. I kind of jokingly always said that he probably didn't leave, right? For the whole week. He doesn't go anywhere. He doesn't leave the house. No, I'm not missing that one again. Jesus shows up. I'm going to be here. You guys are going for pizza? Bring me back a slice. I'll hold down the fort, right? Like he's not leaving. Not happening twice. Not going to happen. Well, a week later, that's what happens. Jesus shows up again, but he's there this time. And Jesus appears, and he speaks to his disciples, and he says this, starting in verse 26. He says, peace be with you. And then he said to Thomas, put your finger here. See my hands. Reach out your hand. Put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe. Verse 28, Thomas said to him, my Lord and my God. Guys, it's the first OMG ever. It really was. That's the equivalent. I mean, honestly, for a Jewish man in the first century to say to any other Jewish man, my Lord and my God, it was blasphemy. You couldn't do it. It was punishable by death. But without reservation, Thomas can look at Jesus and he says, my Lord and my God, because he gets it. He's not just a man. He is God. He's risen. He's a Savior. There he is. He's alive. And he can say, my Lord and my God, because that's who he is. He gets it. He understands it. But guys, not at first, right? Because he had to see. He had to touch. Seeing is believing. We live by that. It's nothing new for Jesus in his day either. Maybe you guys can relate to Thomas this morning. Maybe you know God exists, you know He's real, but still you kind of kick it around a little bit, and you're just not sure because He doesn't show Himself to you. And you hear about what He does in the lives of others, and you still just say, yeah, you know what, I believe it when I see it. I believe it when I see it. So there it is, guys. 4 different kinds of faith. Pass by the empty tomb. 4 different responses. Which one are you? Are you like John? I hope so. John's the tough one. Because John's like, he's got it. He's on point. So if you're like John this morning and everything just fits and it all falls into place and everything is honky-dory and Jesus said it and you believe it and that's all you need, man, I just want to say, good. I want to say congratulations. And I mean that sincerely. Because that is the faith that we are supposed to have. That's what we're called to have. But honestly, most of us probably don't have that. We can probably relate to the other 3 a whole lot more. Perhaps you can relate more this morning to Peter and his faith. You come to Christ, but it's not unencumbered. Because you got this baggage behind you. You have this past sin and this shame and this guilt, and it weighs you down and it wears you down. And you so badly want to reach out and grab a hold of Him with all the faith that you need, but you can't because your hands are already filled with something else. And if that's the case, I want you to know this. Your hand was empty Friday. Your hands were empty Friday. When Jesus took your sin, your shame, your guilt, all that baggage that you carried, and He brought it to the cross for you, and you've been redeemed back to the Father. Maybe you can relate to the faith of Peter. Maybe it's Mary. Maybe again it's you're hurting. And this is a difficult time again, whether that's a broken relationship or it's just health. Maybe it's the health of a loved one. Maybe it's the loss of a loved one. Maybe this is the first Easter, Resurrection Sunday that you're spending without that particular loved one in your life. And it hurts. And your heart aches. And you're not even sure how to move forward from here. And you cannot see Him because of the tears and because of the pain. But if you will just be still and know that He is God, you will hear Him and He will call your voice. Do you want to cry out, God, where are you? And He's right there. Maybe you can relate to Thomas. Maybe you just feel empty and dry. And you know that God is there, but He just doesn't really show Himself in any real ways in your life, and you're not feeling that strength there. And you hear about it from others and what Jesus is doing, you're like, yeah, okay, whatever, but I believe it when I see it. And you really, really struggle. You really, really wrestle with taking the word from the first century to the 21st century. You struggle with taking the message from His day to today, and specifically that today He is alive. Maybe you really struggle with that. So how do we take the message from that day to this day? From the first century to the 21st century. Guys, I can do it in 3 words. Jesus is alive. Listen, I don't know what Easter is like for you. I don't. Some of you new faces, I don't know. I don't know anything about you. I don't know if Easter is this happy, joyous time. Some of you I do know. You get excited. I get spastic. It's like, okay, giving, or offering is my absolute favorite. And then on Easter, Resurrection Day and giving, oh, this was just really great. So some of you are like, yeah, this is awesome. I'm stoked. I get to spend time with my family today and my loved ones. It's just going to be this amazing day. And you come in and you're like, He is risen. Yeah, He's alive. And you're super excited because you live it every single day of your life. It's not just one day. And you come in and you're just bouncing off the walls. But others, not so much. And maybe this is just a difficult day in general. Maybe this is why this is just one of just perhaps a few that you attend service-wise, because of the pain, because of the hurt, because of the shame, because of the guilt, because of all that baggage that you drag behind you, because you miss the fact that Friday night your hands were empty. And some of you, I know right now, I know you're hurting. I know you're struggling. Guys, I know some of you, you're not even walking, you're barely crawling. And here's what I want to tell you. You keep crawling. And you crawl, and you crawl, and you crawl, and you crawl until you find your way to an empty tomb. And don't you dare give up, because through the pain, you will hear Him call your voice, call your name. And if you must, if you absolutely have to, He will offer Himself and say, feel and touch and see that I am alive. And if you allow Him to, He will remove the baggage and the sin and the shame and the guilt. Because He is alive. John takes everything in his gospel and he brings it to this point. He brings it before the empty tomb and he says, here you go. 4 different individuals that walk in front. 4 different kinds of faith. Where are you? Do you have faith? Do you believe? It's all presented. It's all right here. Do you believe? Do you believe Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God? What is your faith? What is it? What does it look like? And guys, that's what He wants to know today. Do you believe? Do you believe? And so let me me say this. If you're here this morning, you don't know Jesus in that way, that He is your risen Savior. If you don't know Him as Lord, we want to make that right. And what's going to happen is really simple.